Hi, good evening, everybody, and I hope all of you are safe and well, and preferably indoors. We are about to start a small chat. I hope it's small on uh, summer's ice isolation and a drink that has at least in certain quarters come to be synonymous with Delhi. That's Ruafza. Okay, so I'll start probably somewhere in the 16th century. I could go further, but then I mean, for matters of convenience, I'd rather start the 16th century and 16th century. So Ain Akbari, which is a decent source of Akbar's administrative orders and scientific developments during Akbar's tenure, talks about how water was cooled during Akbar's time. So surahis, probably of silver or pewter, would be filled two-thirds with water, and then they'd be dipped in a large basin mixed with water and saltpeter. And there'd be this person who would probably stir it into the basin, and the water would be cold in no time. So that's how initially the Mughals started having cold water. The practice would have been much older than that. Now it's significant because this was when the Mughal capital was in Fatehpur Sikri. The second thing was that the shape of the Surahi, the technology, all of it was later seen when wines were cooled in similar round bottles with narrower necks using saltpeter. So the technology might have moved to Italy via Portugal from India. Significantly, in 1586, the Fatehpur Sikri was abandoned as a capital, and then Akbar moved to Lahore. Why is this significant from our point of view, or for the purpose of our discussion? Oh, in the full interest of disclosure, I've sort of kept a cheat sheet here just to let me know where to stop. Rohan, this is I don't have a glass. I've got a bottle of Ruafza that's to help me read the ingredients at some point in time. Okay, so it's significant because when Akbar moved to Lahore, he came closer to the northern hills. And it is said that from about 90 kilometers near Lahore, ice was brought every day. Now, Abul Fazl has gone into great details as far as ice is concerned, both as far as the transportation of ice is concerned and the price. So he said that ice was transported all the way from the northern hills by way of boat, by way of carriage, and by way of bearers. The last being the most expensive, and the first, that's being by boat, being the cheapest. Then he talks about seasonal variation in price. He says the winter the price was the least, the rainy was four times that of winter, and in the intermediate season, somewhere in between, it would be twice the price of ice in winters. Now, why? I mean, of course, Abul Fadl does not talk about how it was stored. Of course, the richer people would probably consume it on a daily basis because it was available daily, but they were probably stored in ice pits which were properly insulated. And also because this kind of ice was available throughout the year, the problem of storage would have been done away with by just purchasing lesser quantities, as opposed to where it was available only seasonally, and they purchase more and probably try to store it. Now, of course, in the intervening period between Akbar and Jahangir, Akbar and Aurangzeb, you've got Jahangir, who developed a liking for the Persian desert Faluda. Faluda is actually the vermicelli kind of thing that is used to top desert. So he developed a liking for this. He also based himself in Kashmir a lot, so he had access to ice. An interesting story relates to the importation of ice into Delhi during the time of Aurangzeb. While Aurangzeb himself does not record it, in Story of Magor, Manuchi talks about this. He says that a king from the hills close to Kashmir, which is probably the Raja of Nahan or Sirmaur, he used to, in addition to revenue, send ice to Delhi to Aurangzeb. So he had asked for a special dispensation, and he had asked Aurangzeb to, allow him to, instead of sending revenue in cash, uh, send ice to Delhi, which could be sold, the revenue realized, and ice could actually be consumed by many more people than they were consuming at that point in time. Aurangzeb, of course, shot the idea down because it meant that the Raja would become rich. It would also mean that money would flow out of the court into the Raja's pocket. And thirdly, he did not want the consumption of ice to be broad based, in the sense he did not want everybody to have access to ice, which of course was considered a luxury at that point in time. Why was it considered a luxury? First of all, because of the fact that it was transported from transported over large distances, which was a labor intensive operation, except when it's brought by boat. The second was that there was also an indigenous method of ice preparation that in again involved covering large areas and employing a huge amount of people. I mean, I think that this was seasonal. The people were unskilled. It was extensive labor, so they came at the probably at the bottom of the labor pyramid, and they were probably the least paid. So it was almost equal to slave labor. So what was this technology? In 1775, we have records from Allahabad from Robert Barker, who talks about how it was done. We have a more interesting account from Fanny Parks. If you remember today, Dr. Little had posted something on Fanny Parks. Fanny Parks has written quite an interesting account of how ice started off in the fields and reached her house. In short, it was like this: that there were these large plain areas that were dug up into irregular square pits about 30 odd feet long and about 2 feet deep. About two-thirds of the pit was covered with hay and rice stalks and sugarcane stalks, and which she generally refers to as powal. Powal is the stalk of rice, then bagas. So it would be covered with bagas, extremely dry, so as to not let, I mean, of course, these were bad conductors of heat. So this, and then on top of that, they would place shallow pans made of shallow earthenware pans, unbaked, unglazed, so that they would help in evaporation. So these were placed in winter months. So the production started sometime in December, and they would go on till the 19th of Feb, is what she says. And they were placed in these pits. They're placed in these they're placed in these pans, and then they were left in the night. So interestingly, there's someone called Abdar who sort of checks the wind every day and sees whether it's worth his effort to carry out this operation. And when he feels that the temperature is right, then he hits the tom tom, and then they all rush. And then from a pot kept in the corner, they pour using a ladle into all these these katori kind of pans. And then they all go off to sleep. At about 3, this Abdar wakes up in the morning and checks, and then again when he finds that there is about a layer of ice, about an inch and a half or so of ice formed, he'd call everyone. They'd pick up the ice from each of the pans, put it into a basket, then take it into an ice pit. Why an ice pit is a pit located in a house which is very well insulated with felt and clothes and everything, and bamboo slats. There is no air that goes in, and an outlet for water to flow out. And it's put into the ice pit, and then people get down into the ice pit and flatten the ice with their feet and with mallets. So I mean, hygiene was really not very high on the list of priorities. So there were these people who were paid extra because it was very cold down there, would get into the pits, stamp the pits either with their feet or with their mallets, and then get out and go back. And this process was repeated almost every night. And if I am to go by Emma Roberts' accounts in Calcutta, it was repeated multiple times in the same night. So in about 3 months, they would have enough ice to last them, as Fanny Park says, till about August. So this would be shut down in Feb and opened in April, and it would last till August. The purchase of ice also is quite interesting. Fanny says that there would be a person who would be sent to the market. He would again descend into the ice pit along with the person in charge of the ice pit, pick the ice, wrap it in a cotton cloth, beat it down to a regular shape, put it in a blanket, and then put it in an ice bag and carry it back home. Now, back home, there was this person called Abdar again, who was in charge of the water. What was his function is that every night, probably so that your Sahab could drink cold water or cold claret, he would sit with a huge pail of water and saltpeter and keep stirring the bottle, the narrow neck bottle, so that so that the Sahab could have cold water or cold claret or whatever. So this Abdar had another function. So when this person would come from the market with the ice, he would again have to weigh it, because according to Fanny Parks, in inverted commas, the natives had a propensity to sell some of the ice in the market and come back home and say that it had melted. Uh, so that's how ice was made. That's how ice was made in Allahabad and in Calcutta. And But then, sometime in the 1830s, in Calcutta, it was felt that there could be an option to this kind of ice that was made. It was called the Hooghly slush or the Hooghly mulch, because the water used was Hooghly. The water used came from Hooghly, and it was slushy, and it would melt off. There was a rapid runoff, and it would melt off. So a few people from Calcutta, the Englishmen, of course, heard about a person in Massachusetts, a person called Frederick Tudor, who who would sell ice. So what he would do is he would cut off large slabs of ice, and he would put them in ships and send them to, let's say, New Orleans or Caribbean. But India was like about 16,000. I mean, it was far, far away. It would take about 3 to 6 months just to get it by ship to India. So, so these people from Calcutta made a request asking him to send it. They said it's cost effective, because till now, ships coming to Calcutta, American ships, would need something called ballast, which is put at the bottom to stabilize the ship. So they said that you would buy that ballast and throw it away. Instead of that, why don't you just get ice, unload it here, and then we can use ice. I mean, of course, you can sell the ice, so it'd be cheaper for you. And that's how the whole transport to Calcutta, the shipment of ice to Calcutta started. Tudor, also partly because of his sale of ice, became the first American dollar millionaire post the revolution. That's in about 50 odd years. He was the first American millionaire. Before he started exporting ice, he was heavily in debt because of failed coffee mission, and he sort of got out of debt, and he had a profitable trade, and he actually he passed on much before the ice trade saw a slump, so he did not see another downturn in his business when he was alive. Now, there is when I talked about isolation, when I wrote about isolation, there is an interesting quote that I wish to share with you. It's by Thoreau on Walden Pond. It says, "Thus it appears that the sweltering inhabitants of Charleston and New Orleans, of Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta drink at my well. In the morning, I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmological philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, because I'm not going to read books there. I lay down the book and go to my well for water, and lo, there I meet the servant of a Brahmin, a priest of Brahma and Vishnu and Indra, who sits in his temple on the Ganges reading the Vedas, or dwells at the root of a tree with his crust and water jug. I meet his servant who's come to draw water for his master, and our buckets, as if to were to grate together in the same well. The pure Walden water is mingled with the sacred water of the Ganges." Of course, there is some amount of hyperbole, there is some amount of wishful thinking, because initially the first consumers of ice were Indo-Anglican, where the Englishmen in Calcutta, and not really the Brahmin whose servant would come to the well, to come to Walden Pond. Eventually, of course, it became a sort of, it was first a fad, and then it became a necessity. And there are people who write that irrespective of the prohibitions of their respective religions, whether it's Hinduism or Islam, people would flock to buy ice and drink. Writing in the 20th century, Percival Spear says that ice, which had come to Calcutta and Madras and Bombay. Incidentally, if you are walking on the Marina Beach, if you walk on the Marina Beach, you'll find like a cylindrical building there. That was one of the ice houses. It's one of the only ones to survive probably anywhere in the world, where Tudor used to supply ice, and it was kept. It's called Vivekananda Illam, or the House of Vivekananda, because that's where he probably stayed when he came to Chennai. So, okay, coming back to Percival Spear, he says that all these imported ice was not transported inland. So Delhi was at that point of time at the mercy again of ice pits and ice makers who would again fill the pans during winter months, which was slightly longer in Delhi from November to February. they'd fill it, then they'd take it out, and then they would supply it. These pans, these ice cellars would the pans and the ice fields were located between Delhi Gate and Kashmiri Gate, and the ice cellars, the people who manned the ice pits came from a village called Baskholi. Now, that was how ice was at that time brought to Delhi, uh, and it is not that ice was very rare, because there is a in the Divan, Ghalib expresses regret, saying that saman आराम के असबार कहाँ से लाऊं, सामान खून ख्वाब कहाँ से लाऊं, रोजा मेरा ईमान है लेकिन गालिब, रोजा मेरा ईमान है लेकिन गालिब, खसखाना और बर्फाब कहाँ से लाऊं. So he is talking about Rosa. He's talking about how poorly he is at the time of Rosa, because he cannot get a cool room, and he cannot get water cooled by ice. Of course, Ghalib is known for things such as this. There's a time, apparently, according to Hali, when Bahadur Shah Zafar asked him, "Ki roza rakhte ho?" He said, "Ek nahi rakhta hu," which was a cryptic answer, because it didn't. I mean, because no one just listening to the answer would know whether he meant he doesn't keep a single one, or he doesn't keep one. Anyway, moving ahead from Ghalib, ice became quite a common commodity, at least among nobility. In 1857, Zahid Dehlvi, whose book Dastan-e-Ghadar has been translated by Rana Safvi, talks about an incident that happened when he was fleeing Delhi. So when it was, I think, the 17th of September, that he's got a neighbor called Nawab Hamid Ali Khan, whose servant comes home and asks Zahir Hasan, who at some point of time was the Daroga Mahi Maratib, which means the custodian of the Royal Standard of Fish. In case you're wondering what it is, you should go to of course you can Google it, or you can go to Safdarjung's tomb. There is this fish. There's a drawing of a fish at the front gate. Of course, it will not be there maybe 4 to 5 years down the line, so you could take a photo of that, or you could simply look at the emblem of the state of Uttar Pradesh, which is also the fish. So that the fish standard was the standard of the Mughal Empire, and Zahir Dehlvi was the custodian. So there is this incident where the Nawab sends his servant to take Zahir and his family out of the area where they're staying, and they all rush out. Zahir's wife, folding all her wedding trousseau and jewelry into a mattress, and then rolling it to the pillow and keeping it in the carriage, and then they are taken to Baraf Khana, and which has been rented out by the Nawab, and they stay in the Baraf Khana for about 4 days before they set off elsewhere. Now, I do not know the location of this Baraf Khana. There is one Baraf Khana which used to be near Sabzi Mandi. So as you came down Fraser's house and crossed the red lights and when you're St. Stephen's Hospital, there would be this Baraf Khana. But that seems to be a structure that was built after the revolt of 1857. So, I mean, I don't know where the Zahir Hasan Dehlvi was taken by this Nawab. What else is there on this? So there is another sort of apocryphal tale about Ghalib and ice and cooling of wine, where he's invited to a party by an Englishman who offers him a bottle of French wine that is kept in a pail of ice. Now, it's kept in a pail of ice and saltpeter. So Ghalib, the Englishman offers the bottle to him and asks Ghalib to open it and do the honors, start drinking. So Ghalib replies to him saying that when there is French wine, you uncork it and you leave it out to breathe and remove the chill a bit. And the Englishman is actually surprised because Ghalib knows something about and knows about letting the French wine breathe. It's not surprising. Ghalib was maybe not a connoisseur, but a substantial consumer of French wine, so that could be it. Now about the pail where the ice and saltpeter was put in. Saltpeter and ice have been used for a long and water have been used for a long time to cool things. One of the things that the Englishman Robert Barker from Allahabad, the one that we was discussing, salt pan, writes about is how in conical metal containers with a cap on top, Milk and dry fruits were frozen in a pail, which is kept in a larger pail where water, saltpeter, and ice was mixed, and then it was eaten, and it tastes very much like cream ice, which is what I think is kulfi, which the name, of course, comes from a container with a cap or a lock, now used to denote a desert. So kulfi essentially could have been made with one of the most common ingredients in Indian sweets, evaporated milk. We use evaporated milk because of a compulsion. We are in the tropics, and we keep reheating the milk all the time to ensure that it does not curdle, which is surprising. I mean, sorry, which which was quite the rule, and which is why I'm quite surprised when rasgulla, which is prepared by curdling milk, does not exactly fit into this whole tradition of boiling milk. But that's, I don't have a skin in the game, so I'm not going to get into that argument. Moving further, so that's how kulfi was made, and there are descriptions of kulfi. And this, of course, I mean, I had started off by of kulfi saying how started about kulfi saying how Ghalib was offered a wine from a utensil, from a container at school using ice and saltpeter. Now, Mirza Ghalib again, sometime in the late 1850s, that's after the revolt of 1857, he writes about how safe he feels in Balli Maran, probably, I mean, compared to Delhi, because because next to him is the Sharif Manzil, which is the house of the royal physician of the Maharaja of Patiala, and his guards are standing guard, ensuring a relative amount of safety and security for the people of Gali Kasimjan, Balli Mara. Now, why did I bring in Sharif Manzil? Well, Sharif Manzil was named after Sharif Khan. Sharif Khan was from a lineage of royal physicians, and he was the royal physician to Shah Alam II, the king who was blinded by the Rohillas. And in the same family, down the line comes Hakim Ajmal Khan. Hakim Ajmal Khan is a significant figure both from the point of view of education, because of Tibia College, from the point of view of Unani medicine. Unani comes from the word Ionian. That's the first kind of Greeks that we Indians interacted with. So that's where the word Unani comes. Unani system of medicine, which in the West is called the Eastern School of Medicine. The Eastern, generally grouped in the category Eastern School of Medicine. And also because he started something called the Hindustani Dawakhana, which would prepare medicines. So he would prescribe the medicines, which probably were free of cost, and then and then the people would go to Hindustani Dawakhana to procure the medicine. The funds from the Hindustani Dawakhana were used to fund Tibia College, which was in its initial stage. One of the employees in the Hindustani Dawakhana was a person called Hakim Abdul Majid. Hakim Abdul Majid left Hindustani Dawakhana in 1906, went down the road in the sense the Hindustani Dawakhana is right at in Gali Kasimjan, went down the road past Ghalib's house, walked straight ahead past Ahata Kale Khan, turned left where now you'll find a lot of people selling Habshi Halwa, and in Lal Kuan set up what is now known as Hamdard Laboratories, Hamdard Laboratory. In 1907, he developed something called Ruh Afza. Not very unique, because we've always had syrups right in 1300s. Ibn Battuta talks about how cane juice, water, and rose syrup was mixed to make something called sharbat. Sharbat, of course, derives from the Arabic word to drink. So does sharab. So does syrup, which through Europe went to Italy, and then went to England, and from syrup to syropos to syrupus to syrup. So that's how it was. So I'm sorry, Ibn Battuta said that it was called sharbat, and then much later in the 18th century, it also came to denote the word for alcohol, sharab. So what he did was not something new. Essence of rose, syrup made of rose, kevda, that's pandanus were all common. But what he did was he brought together a number of herbs together, roots, fruits, flowers together, and then he created this syrup which he calls Ruh Afza. I don't remember most of the ingredients. I've got a bottle here. It says it has sugar syrup, dhania, gul nilobar, khas, uh, then Sharila, then Pudina, Sandal, Tukm Ghazar, and Monakka. So it has a whole lot of ingredients, and there's also pineapple and orange on the label. So this is what he started selling. Now there is an interesting passage that I want to share with you. This is from Nimat Nama. So how has sharab changed in such a long time? Okay, I didn't find the name of the book, is not here anyway. Anyway, let's go ahead. So initially, this was marketed as a medicinal cure. It was for its medicinal properties to prevent dehydration, palpitation in summers, excessive sweating, etc. But he found that people were purchasing it in larger quantities than you would a medical substance, a substance with medical properties. Sharbats as cures are not again a novelty, because you find a lot of Arabian Nights tales where sharbats are included, and they talk about how the protagonist's brother was ailing in bed, and they fed him with sharbat. Sharbat and medicines. So what happened was that what's probably developed as a medicine, like how Coke was also initially, Coca-Cola was also initially sold. What developed as a medicine started being consumed as a beverage. This was not the original bottle. This came out somewhere in the 2000, in the early 50s. The original bottles were actually, there was no original bottle, to be fair. They were actually discarded wine and beer bottles that were bought and then filled in the factory in Ghaziabad and sold. The label for Rue Afza, again, it's multicolor. This at that point in time, it's in 1910 by Mirza Noor Ahmed. This was designed by Mirza Noor Ahmed. There were numerous colors, so they could not. This could not be printed in Delhi, so it was printed by what is called the Bolton Press in Bombay, and they say Bolton Press run by the Parsis with two E's. So this was run by the Bolton Press. Now, where does the name Roo Afza come from? Roo Afza, of course, means something to satisfy the